The affirmation this morning is, I am not lost, I am exploring. And the question this morning is, how big is my circle? How big is my circle? How big is your circle? How big is your circle? How big is the circle of your life, the people in your life, the events in your life? That's really the essence of what practical Christianity or spirituality is about. That's what we are called so often to do, is to widen our circle. In our circle of friends and family and associates, the bigger the circle, the better. And in our thinking, the bigger the circle, the better. If our circle is enlarged, and we all start with only so much in our minds and in our lives. And as we move on, there's an opportunity to let that circle get larger and larger and larger. Our quotation this morning is from Gandhi, and it is one famous one that many of you have heard. I like your Christ. I do not like your Christians. You Christians are so unlike your Christ. And he wasn't really being critical. He was simply making an observation. And the observation was that in his experience, Christ was great, but it was his followers who so often were so unlike him. One of the magnificent things that's happening today is that we have come to understand that as magnificent as our faith is, it is a faith within the context of other faiths. And so even though there may be fences between us, our circle can get bigger and bigger, and so we come to understand people of different faiths differently, and we come to understand them with more clarity and more understanding. The same with nationalities and political groups and racial groups and all of the rest of it. And then that same process moves into our way of thinking and the way that our minds operate. Abraham Lincoln said, I don't like that man very much. I've got to get to know him better. And that was Lincoln's feeling. He didn't like somebody, so he wanted to get to know him better. To get to know people and to be willing to open our lives and our hearts and our minds to a different and expanded way of thinking. This is a magnificent and wonderful time in which to live because so many tremendous things are happening. So many tremendous things are happening. You know, if you listen to conventional wisdom, people will tell us these are terrible times and they're getting worse. Always, right? But then every generation has said that. But every generation has said that because of people whose circles were really small and their thinking was really small in terms of how they felt about what was going on. Here we are on the precipice of so many tremendous and wonderful things happening, and yet we draw upon so many of the negatives, the things that are really not in any way expanding our way of life and our way of thinking. You know, in 1899, the head of the Patent Office in Washington, D.C., in his annual report, wrote a very interesting line. He said that in 1899, with all of the things that had been patented in the United States and the world in the 1800s, that he believed that everything, practically, that was ever going to be invented had been invented. That he really believed that. And he sat in 1899 and said, my goodness, look at all the stuff we got. We've got engines, and we've got trains, and we've got this. It couldn't get any better. Couldn't get any better. And he had no concept. And then what do they say? All in this last century, well, how many inventions? More inventions than the prior period. All of this happened with this explosiveness. How big is the circle? How big is the circle? How big is your circle? How big is your circle of thinking in life and in the world? How big is your circle when you look at the world around you and the people around you? I read a couple of weeks ago a story, and it was extremely well written about the times, not only our times, but all times. And it had to do with the concept of hospice workers and midwives. And you think of hospice workers and midwives as totally different things, right? Hospice workers work with the dying. And they work with the dying in a positive and supportive way. What do? They help the dying move through the process. What does a midwife do? Brings babies into life. And this article was talking about the fact that all of us and the world are constantly a combination of those two things, hospice workers and midwives. How are we hospice workers? We're hospice workers because we're helping something to die. We're helping something to die. We're helping to let go of where we used to be, and we're willing to look at where we're going to be. And then midwives, they birth something new, and out comes a brand newness. In this movement in New Thought, our founders, Mary Baker Eddy, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, Ernest Holmes, Nona Brooks, Emma Curtis Hopkins, all of those women and men, few men that were there, were hospice workers, and they were midwives. They were letting an old idea of spirituality and life die quietly and reverently and respectfully, and then they went on with the birthing of something brand new. The circle became bigger. They let that happen. You know, we talk a lot about healing in these churches. That's the way these churches were founded. These churches were founded on healing. And we've kind of moved away from that. Hopefully we're moving back to it a little bit. For the large part, New Thought says, you use everything. Use everything that's available. And what you use, once you put everything together, things start to happen. Magnificent things start to happen because the fence gets bigger and it gets more inclusive. And you begin to use these different things. So what do we do in healing? We use meditation, we use visualization, we use natural supplements, we do positive things, we do all kinds of things. Do whatever makes sense. And you put it all together and make the fence bigger and bigger. And then if the fence is so big, the circle is so big, and you've done everything and somebody else comes up with some idea that makes sense, make it even bigger. You know, Jesus Christ wanted to make the circle really big. And unfortunately, so often in organized religion and faith, we've made the circle really small. And in our way of thinking about politics and religion and the world, we've allowed our circles to be really small. As Francis, I think, has said to his followers, go and preach the gospel to everyone that you come in contact with and speak if you must. His idea was they should know you by your works and your presence. They should know you by your life. That's what our founders said. And then if we begin to apply these teachings and principles and allow that circle to become larger, and we demonstrate the principles and the teaching. What's the affirmation today? I'm not lost, I'm exploring. I'm not lost, I'm exploring. Every time you face a difficulty, every time you face a point in your life where you believe you're lost or confused, every time you think that you're not where you need to be, you're right where you need to be. Every single time. You and I are exactly where we need to be. I am exactly where I need to be. Every time I sat in those doctors' offices and they told me something, I was there for a purpose. They need to tell me that, and I needed to understand that, and I needed to do something about it. And the good news is that life is filled with exploration. The good news is that everything is going to come to revisit us again and again in our lives until we come to understand the lessons that we've come to learn. The good news is that we are designed and created to be more like that Christ, and the church and our faith and our movement and our religion and our spirituality is moving to that purpose and to that way. The problem is simply that the circle is too small and we need to move the fences and make it a little bigger. And so do we need to do the same things in our thinking and our feeling and our expression of life, because there is limitless potential and opportunity for every one of us. The limitless potential that there's an answer and there's a way. And the answer and the way is for us to be more like Him and to know the truth that sets us free. And the truth that sets us free is that we are created in the likeness and image of God, and that we are endowed by our Creator with those abilities to draw upon that limitless resource of everything that we need to be happy. What's the old affirmation we use? I am happy, I am healthy, I am prosperous. And it comes in that order. I am happy, I am healthy, I am prosperous. You've got to be happy first. If you're not happy, you're going to be unhealthy and you're going to be unprosperous. So this week, every single person that comes into your life that brings you confusion and anguish and upset is there for a magnificent, wonderful reason, because you've got something to learn. Every illness that comes, every challenge that comes, every moment of poverty and lack, every one of those things that we think are so negative have nothing to do with negativity. They have something to do with the wonder of exploring and understanding the realization of who and what we are.